coupling along with that is, when do I start looking for my builder? And we looked at the sequence here on the front slide, and I think this is the best circumstance, but there's definitely times where you can bring in the builder earlier, right? So at this point in the ideal sequence, you've identified a piece of land, you start working with the architect and engineer, therefore they have the files, they have the plans to be able to send to your builder. But I don't think there's a lot of risk on this side, right? The only risk would be you're paying the builder a fee for them to do their job. I just wouldn't pay a fee to this, right? I actually paid 20 grand to a builder after like my third revision of plans to going through it, and then they sold their company, and then we didn't do the deal together. I lost that 20 grand. So I just wouldn't pay a fee to a contractor, a builder, to do their job of getting you bids for these kind of things. So if there's no risk or very low risk, it's a time risk, I suppose, then I would say, yeah, you can start earlier. You can go out of this sequence that I showed here. There's not really a big risk to that. And I would put it in this kind of question is, what building are you building? Are you building Platinum's building? Is it going to be our exact building, or like nearly exact, or are you doing a bunch of different changes to it? If you are building our exact building or so close to it, then you know what? Just start with the plans that we have there. Use what we have, go through, here's all of our subs, and give that to a builder. And I don't think there's a risk to starting early with that. You could start it before you've identified a piece of property. You could start it while you're going through due diligence, or perhaps as you are going through permits and things like that. There's not a big risk to initiating multiple builders, giving them, hey, you know, we haven't found an address yet, but at least here's what the building's going to look like. Because you cannot give them, you know, the site work kind of stuff, right? You have no civil engineering drawings yet. You don't know your utilities and your driveway and all those kind of things. So you would have at least, you know, 2/3 of the numbers or so, right? You'd have the numbers for the building, just not the numbers for all the site work. But you can start there. Again, it's not like you can sign a contract with somebody though, right? Because you're not going to have all the things done. Even if you had the piece of land that you've identified and you used our plans for architectural stuff and you sent it to them, that's still not your numbers yet, right? Those are estimates, and they might be pretty dang close. So it's not a waste of time to initiate on the front side. But it might help you to find your guy, your builder, who is the one person, or maybe there's a couple people that you really are connected with, that you are able to use this to at least get the conversation started. And you go through that kind of funnel of, hey, let's get some loose numbers up front. Maybe it's just an estimate of price per square foot. And then they can start doing some work and talking to all their different subs and looking at Platinum's plans and, okay, here's the framing, here's the concrete, here's the plumbing, etc., and going down through those numbers there. But those are not your final numbers. So at that point, you could pick this conversation back up with the builder once you get all of your plans done, right? You've identified a piece of property. You may own it, you may not own it, but that really doesn't matter yet. But now you have a piece of land and you've worked with a civil engineer, or perhaps you're currently working with a civil engineer, because you can do this at the same time, right? You can go through as you're dialing in your plans and maybe getting comments, going back and forth through permits with the city. You're like, okay, here's my latest civil engineering drawing. I had a comment, they wanted me to increase the pond here, or, you know, move the driveway slightly over here, those kind of things, right? You can be working with the builder through all of that kind of stuff. The consideration here is that as you are doing that, you know, time is passing. It might be 3 months, 6 months, it could be 9 months. Each time, you know, a bid for their subs, they're good for, you know, a couple months maybe, right? But after like 30 days, or after maybe at least, you know, 90 days, those bids may not be current anymore, and they will have to go and rebid it. So for me, I had delays going through my permits with the city. And so I had initiated my builder very early in the process, kind of like what I'm telling you guys to do. And so therefore I had these numbers, and my building was kind of done, right? Like I had those numbers on that, but my site work was not done. I was going back and forth through detention ponds, through well and utility kind of stuff with the city. So that scope of work kept changing as I was getting comments. And therefore, every 3 or 4 months, we'd say, okay, hey, I got these permits, now they're finalized. And then the builder would have to send back out to his subs and get all new bids on these kind of things. And honestly, like, prices went up. And so that's a consideration, right? Like, if your builder, my builder's price to me didn't go up, the price from the subs to him went up. And so, you know, if, again, there's been a lot of inflation and things like that, and companies are very normalized with, oh, I'm going to raise the bid by 3 or 5 or 10%, you know, each year to account for that kind of stuff, whether or not the price actually did go up or not. But if you say to a framer, you know, hey, you know, I want you to rebid this, the price of lumber can drastically change. It can change by $100,000 on the material side. The labor side, you know, that's where it could be the same, could not be the same. But I do want you to have this piece of gold nugget here, that if you are a contractor, right, and let's say you're the plumber, if you come back to me, you know, 3 months ago I gave you a first bid, 4 months later I'm giving you a new bid, I'm just gonna increase my prices a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It's gonna be all pure profit, right? There's no extra labor materials there, but I'm gonna bump it by like 3, 4, 5% because you're still talking to me and I have to spend this time to rebid this thing again. And so I see that as very common. If you delay this thing and you keep pushing back to, hey, let's get a new bid again. Oh, it's been 3 months. Let's get another new bid from your subs. In my experience, and I think it's pretty common, that they'll just bump it by a little bit. And then it's like, well, how did I get 10% higher? Well, it might be because you started a little bit too early with these numbers. And that sub you've reached out to a whole bunch of times, or your builder has, and therefore he's just bumping the price a little bit, right? It's extra work to him. You're obviously not going anywhere. You keep coming back to him to get this new bid, and your builder says, hey, we're going to use you, but we're trying to finalize these permits, and we'll let you know in a couple months again, and you can give me your final number. He's going to bump it again, right? So as you're going through this, either don't start too early, or you just might have to start circulating out these subs, right? If your plumber comes back and he's adding 7 or 8%, you might have to get a new plumber bid to keep him competitive, or to just totally switch to someone who's not adding extra fluff onto their pricing there. So as a bit of a takeaway for y'all, I think that you can start with this. You can start with Platinum's plans. If you're making small changes, it shouldn't be a big deal. If you got to add all sorts of extra laundry rooms and things like that, you might want to wait on that kind of stuff until you at least get, you know, a floor plan from the architect together on those kind of things.